So today we got the explosive finale of The Ones Who Live, and we see why there's so much fire on the poster, because it was a big, explosive episode. Lots of things went down, big revelations, conflict resolution, and spoiler alert, we got the reunion we've wanted to see all along. Big episode, lots of things happen. First things first, happy Easter, everybody. They're broadcasting this on Easter. I hope everybody gets a time to celebrate with their family. He is risen. It's a day of celebration. But with that, I think we're just going to break into my brief thoughts on the overall episode. Overall, I love this full season. I had my criticisms about last week's episode, but I still loved it. This whole show has been amazing, a return to form. Absolutely loved it. This finale was big, explosive, all those things I said. There are a couple things that I would nitpick for sure. For one, the conflict resolution feels a bit too easy, and it feels a little bit rushed, compressed. It feels like we really should have had a few more episodes here. I was surprised that they ended up killing off the main villain character. I was thinking he would carry on a little longer. Now it's like the CRM is like the good guys. It just feels a little too quick for that to happen. Some of the things that they do, like blowing up the bombs that are dropped, they blew that up without any real fight. It just feels like it was unguarded and all these things. There are definitely things along the way it feels like it should have been a little bit more delved into. It's also in this episode heavily doing what I've seen a lot of fans call Gimple speak, but what that is when they just out loud say what the theme of the show is. And that usually doesn't bother me because usually it's thoughtfully done and all that. This time it's very one note, or not one note, but it's just like, this is the meaning, that's what it is, just spelling it out for you. A lot of times there's a little bit more subtlety to it. So that is my basic nitpicks. The other nitpick is we got a lot in this episode of cuts to things that happened seasons before, which to a certain extent I would have loved, and I do love it. I know why they're doing it. But it does have that montage-y aspect where I don't think we needed that. It does drag the episode down. I would be interested to see a breakdown. It's like several minutes of the episode where we could have spent a little bit more time doing things towards the end of the episode. A lot of the big moments we could have had a bit more background stuff into. So that's my overall feeling on the episode. I still love the resolution. Obviously very emotional when we get the reunion with the kids. Wow, that was a powerful moment. The music in this episode is particularly good. It has that rising action. I was definitely heart pounding most of this episode, so the emotions are there. Just a little bit of, it feels like the CRM is over now, and I was thinking that was going to be the big story arc that takes us to the crossover series where everything ends for real. Maybe it's not actually over. We'll have to see. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, and I will be streaming after the episode airs on cable tonight after my family stuff, coming home. We're going to do a quick little live stream to discuss with you guys your thoughts and opinions on the episode. It'll be fun to interact with you, so definitely hit the notification bell if you want to get notified when that happens. But with that, I think we'll just break into this breakdown. So we start with banging. Rick and Michonne are having a good time, okay? This is like the calm before the storm. And we're cutting away to a lot of past episodes, and all that is good. It just feels like, again, we got the previously, where we see clips from previous episodes, and then we get another one right after. I know what they're doing, I get it, and we're trying to make it be like, all this comes to this, it's trying to give that anticipation. But I don't know, we could have just started here, as far as I'm concerned, just with Rick surrendering himself. You think I'm dead, I'm not. And then Rick is back in there. And that teaser, it felt weird. It just felt like nothing happened in it, But I guess they're just trying to build that tension. So here's Thorne. Thorne is happy to see Rick. And she comes out and says the theme of the episode, which is sacrifice. That is the big theme of the season overall. We've talked about that in my previous reviews. And here, Thorne is saying giving up is actually a positive thing. Not giving up on your goals, but giving something up. So sacrificing, wanting to go back to your loved one, in Rick's and Thorne's case, is good because we're sacrificing for the greater good. Now, it's definitely on the nose, for sure. But it's also playing on the word giving up, because there are two definitions to it. And this scene is treating them as if they're one thing. So it's just weird. It's like, that's not what giving up is, you know? But I see what they're going for, and I definitely get it. And it, with just a little bit more subtlety, it would have been even better. But yeah, I see what they're going for, and the thematic stuff, the symbolic stuff, it all works for me. It's just in terms of the execution. Could have had a little bit more subtlety in there, but I totally understand what they're going for. Here we got Michonne breaking in, and it does feel a little easy, but at least she has a plan, right? She led this really fat, chubby zombie, and I like to see different types of zombies, so this is cool. We got a big zombie with his shirt off. We don't usually even see them without clothes because it takes so much time with the prosthetics, so I do appreciate when they take the time to do that. So Michonne uses that as a distraction. Soldier comes to take the zombie out. She climbs up this tree. It was very convenient how it worked out. I'm okay with it. But again, if we had more time, this was something we could really delve into. She's staking the place out. How do we get in? Where's the hole in their thing? You know, if we want to have this impression of the CRM being this massive group and its impenetrable fortress, they have a weak point maybe. We got to look for what it is. We got to get somebody on the inside. Like, there's all these things I would have loved to see more of. You know, having to turn people over. You know, even like the citizen guy from #1 is in the power or waste facility or something. I would have loved to see that guy come back and we convince him before we convince. Again, like, this is why I do feel like we should have held off on some of this for season 2, but they want that big explosive finale, so I get what they're going for. Now we are in Jadis's apartment, and there's a bunch of art around, which I love, and Rick's about to get the Epsilon briefing. So I like this idea here that Beal wants to spend time on his own prior to an operation. And I've seen it in like war films before where there's the night before the operation. A lot of people will spend that, you know, getting drunk by the campfire. A lot of people will spend that on their own. Everybody has their own way of compartmentalizing and dealing with the trauma that's about to happen. So Beal is doing that by spending his time on his own. It's a little convenient for the plot, of course, because him being on his own allows Rick to get away with what he gets away with at the end. One thing where it's like it's convenient for the plot, there's nobody checking in on Beal. There's no, you know, there are a lot of things that I feel like should have been addressed a little more. But the concept that we're going for there, theme-wise, is we got to sacrifice. Again, sacrifice is everything, and there's this theme of the sword. The sword is the symbol for we got to kill so that we can survive. And we get cuts away to various episodes of the previous show where they have to show all the people that they killed along the way and how are Rick and Beal that different. I get what they're going for with the cutaways, and I like a little bit of it. I think they delve a little too deep into it, but that's just a personal preference thing more than anything. I think a lot of people probably get a kick out of seeing all these montage edits because it's, oh, so many years, and it's definitely, you know, we're 14 years into The Walking Dead at this point. It makes sense to have some nostalgia bait in there, so I'm totally fine with that. Michonne's having trouble finding the slip of paper that reveals everything about Alexandria. She finds it in the cat, which is cool. We saw a cat statue that she made before, and they even have this cut of Michonne carrying this cat thing. And that's another thing, like, I love seeing these little Easter eggs with the cat, but seeing the exact cutaway in the episode itself, it takes away where fans can be like, oh, remember when Michonne was carrying this cat this one episode? And like that fan discussion is what makes this community so vibrant, you know? So it takes away a little bit of that, but I see what they're going for again. But Michonne, I was like, just set it on fire, get rid of it. She rips it up, and I'm like, don't leave that there, because that's going to be bad if they find that. They could piece all that together. Thankfully, she takes it with her. So that's just one thing, but she's very emotional in this part. And then she gets spotted. The door's locked, but somebody tries to put a slip of paper under the door, and they think that Jadis is in there. And then Michonne has to take them out. Brutal. It's a brutal episode. We got some really brutal deaths in this, so I do appreciate that. So here's the briefing. Major Beal, close up. It's getting intense. And first we get a little bit of lore about how there was this civil war in Pennsylvania. So we get a little bit of backstory about Beal. He grew up in Pittsburgh, which another shout out to George Romero, and I'm also from Pittsburgh, so respect. I like when they mention that, but they just mentioned Pittsburgh last episode, so it does feel a little weird. But regardless, I respect that. I like that. I appreciate that. But he has this story of how this civil war between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. And he was in Philadelphia with the Pennsylvania National Guard because that's where they're stationed apparently. And the feds were in Pittsburgh and they were fighting on two fronts. It was a little unclear at first, but I understand now that he's talking about fighting the dead as well as fighting the feds. So he disagreed with them bombing the cities, which is a little confusing because is that not what he's about to do right now? So, like, what is the difference? Like, why was he fighting against the feds? I would have liked to learn a little bit more about that. What was their beef? Why are they fighting? But at first you think the two fronts are Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, but it was actually fighting the feds and fighting the dead, like I said. Just a little caveat with that is a few things. I find it hard to believe that the feds would come to Pittsburgh. I think they would take Philadelphia personally because it's the bigger city and it has more established tradition there. And Pittsburgh's a pretty small city relatively, and I know the writers of the show probably think they're pretty close. I don't know, I don't know where the writers are from, but it's actually like 3.5 hours away. It's pretty far. So I don't know, but that, nitpick, but I'm from Pennsylvania, so I gotta say that. But, and also the capital city is not Philadelphia of Pennsylvania, but this is all nitpicks, so we're moving on. So I like this part here where they're talking about what's the worst thing you ever did, and we're getting flashbacks to things that Rick did, and Rick talks about biting a dude's neck out, and, that is definitely one of the most memorable things. And they bring that up because later he talks about how he saved Carl with that and didn't even manage to save him in the end. But the neck thing, I look at as not the worst thing that Rick did. Rick definitely did worse stuff, morally speaking, because that was just straight up self-defense. He did worse things. I think the worst thing Rick probably did was in the war in season 8 when he was teaming up with Negan's people and he and Morgan started killing saviors. I think that's probably the worst thing morally that he did because they surrendered, they were working together, and he just slaughtered them. So that is definitely, and even the thing at the satellite station, although the Saviors picked the fight first by attacking first with Daryl and whatnot, and they were doing shady stuff, you can make the argument, but those are the things that I would pick as the most morally corrupt things that Rick ever did, and I stand by that. The next thing, definitely justified. I have no issue with that. But I like, we are the Walking Dead. And even Beal brings that up early on, that we're the dead ones and all that. So we get the big info dump here. And we are also seeing on Michonne's side, there's this summit going on. So she's learning about stuff. We got satellite pictures or helicopter photos of million-strong hordes that are going to wipe everything out. And humanity has 14 years left. Again, I would just like a little more detail. It's like, what are you basing that on? And I know they got number crunching and all that. So they're going to wipe out Portland just like they wiped out Omaha. And Rick learns about that in this scene. There's not much justification as to why. In the World Beyond, if you watch World Beyond, they talked about how the communities were not self-sustaining. We were going to continue to send them resources and they were just going to essentially waste them. And they were all going to die anyway, so we wiped them out to save ourselves, even though you could just, stop sending them things. You just, not like you have to kill them. You'd be like, hey, guys, you're on your own now. That's shady in its own right, but it's better than wiping them all out. Just let them have a shot. We're not going to help you out, but you do you. But I guess that would be like, oh, maybe they'll wage war on us if we make that move. Maybe that's the calculus. I would have liked to get a little deeper into why Portland. What is wrong with Portland? I mean, in real life, there's definitely a lot of things to talk about, but what is it about Portland that won't wipe them out? Are they all doing, mushrooms and, and, just doing artsy stuff? Is that why? I don't know. I would have liked to know a little bit more about that. We keep getting these cutaways to this scene here where they're talking about their plan. I could have done without that. I know what they're going for, but it just feels a little unnecessary. We get these cutaways, and Beal's talking about how they have spies everywhere, which is, I think, really interesting, and that's definitely going to come up. In Dead City, I think there's probably some CRM connections. In Daryl Dixon, there's definitely some CRM connections, in my opinion. Well, based on how this ends, maybe not. I thought it was all going to converge into one massive CRM as the big bad. We're taking them down. But based on the end of this episode, maybe that's not what's happening. Maybe I just got that all wrong. I think that's a little disappointing to me. But we'll see. Now Michonne's learning about how they're taking kids that they think are going to be helpful to them down the line, gifted kids or people with talents. They're going to take them out of school, and then they are going to wipe the city out. So, of course, having the kids on the screen, I don't know why that helps their briefing, just having a bunch of kids on the screen. Maybe it's like, oh, we're seeing the kids that we're saving, and it's to encourage people to do that. But it pisses off Michonne, and I think that's the natural reaction. So I don't know why showing a bunch of kids on the screen is really the best idea. But, whatever, that is what it is. And that concept was in World Beyond as well. They're taking, Hope was the kid in that one that they wanted to take. We don't want to get lost in the weeds talking about that too much. But this whole scene with Beal, Rick's got his hand on the knife, and we know what he's thinking about doing. He's thinking about killing him, and it does feel a little easy that he gets away with it, but basically, Beal says you can become the leader down the line and all of that, and it's a great scene. I love the overall scene as despite my nitpicks, things I want to learn more about. It's a big exposition dump, and that's probably why they have all these things they're cutting away to, so it's not just like, oh, two guys at a table talking. I would have liked almost more visual supplements, oh, here's a video of the Horde. Oh, here's this, and this. I would have liked to see a bit more of that as opposed to all these random cutaways and past things, but I get what they're going for. Beal asks him to swear on the sword, just like Okafor did, and Rick won't do it. And now Rick, again, saying the theme out loud, is saying he's reclaiming the sword. He's holding it in his hand. Beal is not the one who's going to decide who dies for the greater good, so to speak. Oh, and Beal also talked about how he's taking people's freedoms away, and he's going to have martial law again. And the world is too dire for freedom. And we're fighting for freedom now. And I mess with that. I like fighting for freedom. And we're fighting to save Portland. So there's a lot of moral gray stuff where Rick's killing people, but we're doing it in favor of trying to save thousands of people, millions maybe. So it's definitely, I think, justified in this case. But Rick's like, I'm going to decide that, not you. We're fighting for the greater good. You are the enemy. So I like reclaiming that. And again, it's just a question of adding a little subtlety to it. But, I like seeing Rick here actually, dealing with what he just did, and seeing him take that in. He talks to Thorne on the radio, lies about Beal, and then he sees this card outside, and that's where he's going to put Beal's body, which, it almost seems like just leave him there because there's nobody around. Like, that's the thing, is like, why didn't anybody hear anything? Why isn't there a guard outside? I get Beal wants to be alone, but doesn't he want somebody he trusts to be nearby in case something like this happens? Beal also was aware of Rick's penchant for being rebellious. Was he going to accept this? Beal even had a gun in his hand at one point. He did talk about the value of having Rick, somebody who escaped a bunch, coming back despite everything, and the value of the story there. And that is a kind of concept from the final issue of the comic series, where the story of Rick Grimes is something that outlasts him and is very important. And I love that element of the original comic, and we're kind of hinting at that here. And I hope they get to that down the line. But yeah, I so far, I like that idea. But again, it's like, is this really the guy you want to trust? I wouldn't. He betrayed us a bunch of times, etc. So even just looking at it from Beal's perspective, it's like, it feels a little reckless to not at least have somebody in the room who already had the briefing there. Maybe he didn't want people to hear about, oh, you're going to be the leader in 10 years, something like that. Maybe that's what it is. But, I don't know. It also felt a little underwhelming in the sense that we already knew a lot of the stuff in the briefing. So it didn't convince me. I would have liked to have a briefing where it's like, okay, maybe destroying Portland is justified in a sense. Like, I would never support that. in reality. But if they could explain it in a way where it made sense, then maybe, And I forgot to mention also how he said he sacrificed Pittsburgh to save Philadelphia, also tying in to everything because they let the Horde take over the feds. And the feds didn't have eyes on this Horde, but the state did. And it's like the feds have more resources, so it's nitpicking. It's nitpicking, but I think it's worth pointing out. So Michonne has to jump off the roof, and then she's like, I have to do this, and then she ends up taking the elevator instead. And then Rick encounters somebody, and I remember people breaking down this trailer were like, oh, dude, that's going to be Heath. We got to let Heath go, guys. Heath is never happening. Forget Heath. He was never a good character anyway. He was barely in the show. Can we let him go once and for all? Forget Heath. I'd never want to hear about Heath again. Please stop. Okay, and now we're in the elevator. Rick just brutally killed this guy. Very, very brutally. And it was definitely like, brother, And Michonne happens to be there, and she's like, hey, it's okay, it's me. And I like that part. Thorne, for some reason, goes out to the fence where they were killing walkers. I'm not sure why she goes there, because I think she knows that the briefing isn't going to be done there. I don't know. But now we got a brief scene where we pause for a second and we talk about, our feelings. We can go back, we don't have to go. It's this final decision point where we can leave and save ourselves, or we can fight for the greater good. And they choose that because that's who they are. And I love that, and it's like Rick, really in this season was a lot more emotional, but I think it was justified. And I love in this scene how he's the one who says, we missed all this time with our kids. And I think that was really a powerful part of the episode. We have a little bit of emotion before the big explosion at the end. So I love this scene. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, there's no time for this. Just do it. But that's, definitely required in a script, is to have moments like this where it's like, okay, it doesn't really make sense that we pause, but we have to just for pacing. And Rick's like, we could go back. But I almost wish Michonne was like, if we go back now, they're going to wipe our kids out. So we would have less time with them than if we do this. There's a missed opportunity there. But they got these grenades, which again were unguarded, just very easy to obtain. And even though I know that they have high requirements for people getting in, but they should always assume that there's a chance. You don't want to have somebody alone with all these munitions. You never know, somebody could go AWOL or do something crazy. There's always that possibility when you have a group of like hundreds, thousands of people. And these bombs are just, there's nobody in sight. And they just can set up, it just does not feel satisfying when it's this easy to just waltz in. And of course, Thorne catches up with them, which is good, that's something. But it's too little too late. At that point, it's like, it was so easy to get in here. When it's the biggest summit that they've ever had, and everybody's here. There's a tent right outside, and Beal's supposed to speak, I'm assuming. And it's just, where is anybody? I don't know. It's a bit much for me, but I guess it's a nitpick. I also forgot to mention that Rick took the sword, the general's sword from history, and now Michonne has it, which is cool. I love that. Just a nitpick again is like, it's an old sword. I don't know if it would really still be holding up as much as it needs to in this episode. But, that's something. They got Beal as a zombie, which is really fun. And they use them to tie the bombs to. So they're basically the detonators, which I love that. It's fun to use zombies in a creative way. So I like that. And I like the reference to Nat, that Nat inspired them to do this, etc. I almost wish she was here for this part of the episode. So Thorne catches up with them, and they are at a standoff, but Thorne doesn't want to shoot him. I don't know. Part of me thinks that she should just shoot him right away, And she wants him to go back, but it's too late. Rick and Michonne are really close to it. Everybody else dies, but they have like a blanket over them, and that saves them somehow. This is what I mean when I'm like, it's too easy. And then this stuff in the first episode, or second episode with Michonne, when the bombs are dropped on her and her group, they basically like inhaled it for like 3 seconds, and it ruined their whole next few years. And yet Rick and Michonne are breathing this stuff in for a while, and it's fine. I get they have the water coming down, which I get that helps. And Michonne says it dissipates quickly, yada yada. It's like, well, not that quick though, right? I mean, I don't know. So that's one thing. Thorne has a mask out of nowhere, seemingly. I don't know if she had one in this scene before. But yeah, that's what I mean when I say this stuff is just too simple. I love the explosion though, and it was brutal too. It was good CGI, everything together, and I love just seeing people explode. Man, it was brutal. It was cool, and now we got a horde of CRM zombies, and the CRM zombies all have the masks on, so they're harder to bite, which I think they use a lot in this episode, which is probably why they have the mask to begin with, which is actually smart. But the masks are they can save everybody from everything, just like Fear the Walking Dead season 7. That's all they need to get out of this perfectly fine and not have to recover for months and months like Michonne did, even though Rick was without it for a long time. And they escape here. Also, a few nitpicks for this part. I don't get why Thorne isn't shooting at this point. And of course, she's coughing like nobody else is. It's all good for everybody else, but she's having an issue, even with her magical mask. And then they have the argument about the love being dead thing. And that was the one part of the episode I was like, that was really cringe. So that was, one of the biggest examples of having too much themes just outwardly stated. It's a bit too much. And also, while I'm at it, I forgot to mention, why did Rick leave his hand? Why would you do that? It seems foolish to me. I don't get it. I understand it's symbolic. It's the dark side of him that he has to sacrifice and leave behind. I get it symbolically, but story-wise, why would you do that? I don't get it. It was too useful, man. Come on. And I really thought Rick was going down for a second. He gets surrounded, and then they blew it up. I'm glad they resisted the urge to kill off a major character. I did think that was going to happen. I thought they were going to kill off either Rick or Michonne or somebody. Didn't think that they kill off Beal and everybody else and Thorne. I do like how Thorne, had her moment where she, just like Jadis, the good side of her won out in the end, and she's like, Okafor was right, blah, blah, blah. I do wonder what Okafor's plan was, but he wanted to take things over and presumably stop these bad things from happening. But I love this overhead shot, kind of calls back to the end of the pilot episode, pulling back. And big horde of zombies, and Rick and Michonne are escaping. We're getting a voiceover on the radio about this big event happening and how the truth of their operations is coming out and how shady they are and that they wiped out Omaha and all this stuff. And now the CRM's going to be free and all these other things, and we're going to help people, all this stuff. It just happened way too quick. And to me, it's just still, like, even with all this happening, I think that the people there would want to arrest Rick and Michonne because they did something bad too, right? I mean, obviously the leadership is the people here, supposedly, so that's why they're just like, oh, okay, it's all the evil leaders are here doing it. But, there is the aspect where it's like they're following orders. Whose fault is it really? How much can you blame everyone individually? So there is that open question there. And I would have thought that they would at least have a trial, not just oh, here, we'll send you off where you need to go. It just feels a little too much, too quick. And this is the scene we've been waiting for the whole series. I honestly wasn't sure if we were going to get it or not. Michonne and Rick come in, and they hug Michonne first, and I'm like, bro, you didn't even think your dad was alive. And you're not going to... I get RJ doesn't know that that's his... Well, he does, though. It's kind of weird he just assumes that it's him. But yeah, that's just a little nitpick. It's like, they didn't necessarily think Michonne was dead in the same way. It's like the prodigal son returns. The prodigal father returns. He's the one who should get the big moment first, before Michonne. In my opinion. I get that she's the mom and all that, but it just felt like they hugged Michonne and then they're like, oh, hi, Dad, you're here too. It was emotional, though, and they do these reunions a lot, and a lot of times they underwhelm. Not so much in this case, because we got that big run-up, a big emotion. Just that thing where it should have been Rick, man. It should have been Rick. He's just kind of awkward in the background here, and it feels a little weird. But, they make up for it here, I think. And then RJ's like, I knew you'd come back, and he says, how? And RJ says, I believed. And that's beautiful thing about faith And I think on this Easter Sunday, I think that's a nice thing to end on, that you just believe and things can work out. So that's my opinion on this episode. Let me know what you guys think on this episode and the season overall. What do you like about it? What is lacking? What do you think is going to come next? All these things we'll love to discuss with you. And we got that live stream tonight, 10:15. We're going to be talking about it, and I hope to see you guys there. But with that, I hope you guys have a great Easter Sunday with your family, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Peace out.